For months, a 9-year-old boy stood at his dead father's gate every afternoon, waiting for a mother who was never coming back. His neighbors watched and did nothing.
We saw Ikenna before he was anything. We saw him when he was just a young man with dusty boots and a dream too large for his circumstances. He came to Agu-Nna Road carrying nothing but a plot of land his father had left him, a borrowed wheelbarrow, and a wife whose belly was just beginning to swell with their first son. He was not rich. He was not connected. He had no uncle in government, no cousin in the bank. What he had was his 2 hands and a stubbornness about the future that some people mistook for arrogance and the rest of us recognized immediately as faith. He broke the ground himself on a Saturday morning in March. We watched from our doorways, from our windows, over our compound fences. He plastered the front porch on his knees, pressing each tile carefully into place like a man arranging a gift. He plastered the walls with a smoothness that even the professional builders who came to inspect it admired quietly. He painted the gate himself, green, white, green, the colors of the Nigerian flag. And when we teased him about it, called him Ikenna the patriot, he laughed his big laugh and said, "This country has suffered, but it is still ours. Why should I not honor it?" When the roof went on and the compound was finally complete, he stood alone in his yard one evening and wept. He did not know we could see him from the road. He stood with his face turned upward and his shoulders shaking, and we looked away to give him the privacy of his own miracle. A man weeping over something he has built with his own hands is one of the sacred sights on this earth. We were not going to cheapen it with our staring.
The housewarming was in December. He slaughtered a goat. Ngozi made enough soup to feed the entire street and still have leftover for the next morning. There was music, and there was dancing, and there was the kind of laughter that bounces off new walls and gets absorbed into them, becoming part of the structure itself. His brother Ojoko came. He came dressed in his finest, smiling broadly, spraying money during the high life numbers, embracing Ikenna with both arms and kissing his cheek. He lifted little Emeka, just a toddler then, barely steady on his feet, and swung him into the air until the boy screamed with delight. We all celebrated together that night. We did not know we were attending the last joyful gathering that home would ever witness. They call it an accident still, officially, on paper, in the police report that was filed and closed within 2 weeks with a speed that should have been scandalous but wasn't, because in this town, speed and justice have never occupied the same sentence. A car that had navigated these roads 1,000 times lost its brakes on a clear, dry night and left the road. Ikenna and Ngozi, both gone before help could arrive. Gone the way people only live together in the most tragic of love stories, holding the same fate, sharing the same ending. The 2 boys survived only because they had been left with a neighbor that evening, a last-minute arrangement, the kind of small decision that saves lives without anyone knowing it is doing so. We mourned. This entire street mourned as one body. The women cooked for days. The men sat together in silence the way men on this road only sit when words have become useless. Baba Audu, who had guarded the entrance of Agu-Nna Road for 2 decades and prided himself on his composure, wept openly at the graveside. We assumed it was grief for a neighbor he had watched build his home from dust. We did not yet know what else it was. We did not yet know what Baba Audu had seen. Ojoko arrived with his bags 11 days after the burial. 11 days. The mourning period had not even fully completed itself. The black cloth was still hanging at the gate, the green, white, green gate that his brother had painted with such deliberate pride when Ojoko's vehicle turned into Agu-Nna Road and parked in Ikenna's compound with the casual authority of ownership. He brought 2 boys to help carry his things. He brought a woman from somewhere to begin cleaning and reorganizing. He moved through his dead brother's rooms like a man taking inventory of what now belonged to him. Mama Chidima, the eldest woman on this road, watched from her window and said nothing. But her neighbor who was sitting with her that morning reported afterward that Mama Chidima's hands resting on her lap had curled slowly into fists. The gate color changed first. He painted it black within a week. We are not superstitious people. We do not read meaning into every small thing, but this was not a small thing. That green gate was Ikenna's handwriting on the face of his own home. To paint over it was to erase him. To choose black, the color of mourning, the color of erasure, was to announce something that Ojoko perhaps didn't even realize he was announcing, that he had come not to preserve what his brother built, but to bury it further, to make sure that in time people driving past would see only Ojoko and forget that anyone else had ever stood here. Then the sign came down. The small hand-painted board that Ikenna had mounted at the entrance, Okafor Family Home, Estate 1998, to God be the glory, taken down and not replaced. Bare wall, anonymous wall, as if the house had no origin story, as if it had always simply existed, ownerless, waiting for whoever was bold enough to claim it. New curtains went up. New furniture arrived. Ojoko's car replaced Ikenna's in the spot beside the mango tree. In the evenings, Ojoko sat on the veranda Ikenna had tiled on his knees, and received visitors who came not out of love, but out of the particular calculation that drives people toward whoever currently holds power. And the boys moved through it all like displaced persons in their own inheritance. Daniel, the younger one at 9 years old, had developed a habit of standing near the gate in the late afternoons and staring down the road. We knew what he was looking for. He was looking for his mother's silhouette coming down toward him with a pot on her head and water swinging from her hand. His mind was still waiting for her. His heart had not yet received the news that his eyes had already witnessed. So he stood at the gate and waited for someone who was never going to come, and it was the most unbearable thing this road had ever been asked to look at. Emeka did not wait for anyone. Emeka watched his uncle. He was 16, and his eyes had become something that grown men looked away from, not because they were threatening in the way that angry young men's eyes can be threatening, but because they were too knowing. They held a comprehension that no child should possess. He had done the arithmetic of what happened to his family and arrived at an answer, and the answer lived in his eyes now, permanent and heavy as iron. We whispered. We must confess this before we confess anything else. We whispered across fences, and at the borehole, and at the market, and at the back of church after service. We whispered because Ojoko had money, because the police had been settled. We knew this without being told, the way communities know things, through the texture of how official people move and speak and avoid eye contact. Because the family meeting had gone nowhere, dissolved into argument and procedural uncertainty, and the quiet pressure of Ojoko's influence on those who owed him. We are not cowards by nature, but fear has a way of making cowards of everyone eventually, and Ojoko was patient in the way that dangerous people are patient. He did not threaten loudly, he threatened softly. He threatened through implication, through proximity, through the demonstration of what had already happened to a family who stood in his way. And so we whispered and we watched. And the boys were alone in the house that their father had built with his own hands, while we kept our doors respectably closed. Baba Audu, however, could not sleep. Every night, on his wooden stool at the entrance of Agu-Nna Road, old Baba Audu sat with his torch and his thermos, and the thing he had seen and not yet spoken. He had seen Ojoko's car parked outside the compound that night. He had seen it arrive and noted the time, because noting arrivals and departures is the discipline of a man who has guarded a gate for 20 years. He had seen it leave. He had thought nothing of it then. Brothers visited each other. There was nothing unusual about a parked car. He understood what he had witnessed 3 days later, sitting at the funeral, watching Ojoko weep in the front row with his hand over his face. And the understanding had been living inside Baba Audu ever since, like a stone he had swallowed and could neither digest nor expel. It was aging him. You could see it if you looked closely. This old man becoming older not from years, but from the weight of an unspoken truth pressing on him from the inside. It was a Thursday evening in October when the road changed.
The community meeting had been called for something else entirely. A mundane matter of shared infrastructure costs, the kind of agenda that fills community meetings and resolves nothing memorable. 40 people gathered under the large mango tree at the center of the compound. The elders settled into their plastic chairs. Conversation was beginning in the easy, scattered way of people who have gathered more for community than for urgency. The gate opened. Emeka walked in alone. He was wearing a plain white shirt, slightly oversized on his now thin frame. Grief had taken weight from him that he had not had to spare. His face was composed in the particular way of someone who has made a final decision and is calm because the deciding is done. His eyes were red at the edges, not from recent tears, but from the accumulated red of too many sleepless nights across too many months. He walked to the front of the gathering with steps that were slow and deliberate, and he stood before the elders, and he waited. Elder Dike, the eldest man present, looked at this boy for a long moment. Something in the way Emeka stood, the straightness of it, the terrible dignity of it, made the elder set down the paper he was holding. He nodded. Emeka spoke.
To every single person who has subscribed to this channel, thank you. Your support means more than you know. Every like, every comment, every share, every minute you spend watching, it truly matters. You are the reason this channel keeps growing. You are the reason these stories are told. Please don't forget to like the video, share and subscribe so you never miss what's coming next.
My name is Emeka Ikenna Okafu. My father built the house on this road. You watched him do it. My mother used to greet every one of you by name when she brought him food. You remember her? They are both dead. And the man who killed them is sitting on my father's veranda tonight. The talking that had been happening in pockets around the gathering stopped completely. A child who had been running between the adults was caught by her mother and held still, instinctively, the way mothers hold children when something serious enters the air. I have tried the police. I have tried the lawyers. I have spoken to the family. There are documents and there is evidence, and there is a witness who saw what was done, and none of it has moved because everything in this town can be purchased except the truth. And the truth is that my uncle murdered my parents so he could take a building. That is what my father's life was worth to his own brother. That is what my mother's life was worth. A structure made of blocks and cement that my father poured with his hands while you all watched. He paused. Something moved across his face. A crack in the composure, quickly sealed. He looked briefly at the ground, then back up. My brother is 9 years old. He stands at the gate every afternoon waiting for our mother. He does not understand yet what forever means. I understand it. I understand everything. And I am not before you to cry. I am before you to ask one question. The mango tree above them was completely still. No wind, no movement. 40 people holding their breath without having decided to. The silence that followed was the loudest thing Agu-Nna Road had ever heard. It pressed on every chest in that compound. It entered through the ears and settled somewhere below the throat, because the question had not landed in the mind, it had landed in the conscience. That place in each person where they keep the things they know they should have done and didn't. Emeka had walked into the gathering of his community and cracked that place open without apology. And now everyone was exposed and blinking in the light of what was inside them. Baba Odu stood up first. He rose slowly from the back of the gathering, his old joints carrying him with effort, his torch still in his hand. He walked through the crowd in complete silence and came to stand beside Emeka. Then he turned to face the elders, and his voice, when it came, was rough with everything he had been swallowing for months. I saw Ojoko's car that night. I saw it come and I saw it go. I have the times. I was afraid. I am not afraid anymore. Then Mama Chidinma stood, slowly, with her walking stick, with her 80 years and her 4 dead husbands and her absolute fearlessness. She rose to her feet. Then the woman who sold tomatoes at the junction, then the man who repaired generators on the corner, then the church secretary, then others and others, rising not in the theatrical way of crowds caught up in a moment, but in the quiet way of people who have individually decided, one by one, each one choosing, until nearly every person under that mango tree was standing. Emeka watched it happen. He did not smile. He was not relieved in the way that people are relieved when something small resolves. What crossed his face was something more serious than relief. Recognition, perhaps, that justice is not a gift but an argument, and that he had made his argument, and that Agu-Nna Road had finally, at great cost and terrible delay, chosen to answer.
We are telling this story because a community that stays silent is a community that has chosen a side. We chose the wrong side for too long, and we must say so plainly. We watched Ikenna build. We watched Ngozi greet us by name. We watched Ojoko erase them both and repaint the walls over their memory. And we whispered, and we calculated our safety, and we left 2 children alone in a house that was eating them. But the boy came. The thin boy in the white shirt came and stood before us and asked one question. And that question did what months of private guilt could not do. It made us remember who we were supposed to be to each other. Agu-Nna Road has a long memory. We remember the sound of cement being mixed in the early morning. We remember a woman's voice calling out good afternoon to every soul on the street. We remember a green, white, and green gate. We remember the laughter that came from inside unfinished walls. We will not whisper anymore. We owe Ikenna that much. We owe Ngozi that much. And we owe that boy, standing straight before us in his dead father's road, every loud and unafraid thing we still have left to give. Agu-Nna Road. We were here. We saw everything. We failed. And then, when a child shamed us into it, we finally stood. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like, and share to support the channel.